Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is one of those cases again. You'll find out as we get through it. It is the stalk case of Nicole Wedger. Nicole was only 32 years old at the time of this occurring. If you guys have any more cases you'd like me to look into, please let me know. I'll look into them for you. But for now, let's just get stuck in. So Nicole lived in Melissa in Texas from what I could find. She had a child from a very young age. I believe she was around about 17 years old at the time. He was called Trey, and she ended up bringing him up as a single mother. So she was the mother, she was the father, because I don't really know what happened in the relationship with the dad, but I just know that he wasn't in the picture. So basically she raised him and did everything for her son all by herself. She'd not lived in this house for very long, and to tell you like the story of how she moved to this house, I'll have to go back a little bit. So originally they lived in the Dallas area. Again, she lived with her son Trey. Nicole was said to be very independent, very loving, and just such a lovely natured woman. She was very social. She seemed to make friends very easily. She was just that kind of person. It all came pretty easy to her in that sense. And Nicole, as I said, she was a single parent, so she did everything she could for her son. She did everything money-wise that she needed to do to give him the best upbringing that she could possibly give him. You know, so sometimes she'd be working as a broker, and other times she'd be getting a job dancing in the club or something like that. She just did like anything and everything that she could. Around the time of this case occurring, she'd actually been accepted into a nursing school, so that was her plan. She was going to become a nurse and earn like quite a fairly decent wage. Everything seems to be going really well for her. But then she met a man. This man was called Michael Adams. He was 50 years old, so quite a lot older than her. And Nicole fell literally head over heels for him. He treated her really well. He would buy her flowers, and he did this thing where he would stick sticky notes saying I love you, you know, everywhere. You would put them on the inside of a coat. You would just put them everywhere, and he used to buy her things just spontaneously. Again, flowers, gifts, chocolates, anything like that. He would just buy her all the time, and it flattered her, and you know, it made her really feel good about herself. It made her feel good about him as a person, and she just fell for him. Trey said that his initial kind of, I don't know, like opinion of him was that he was a bit weird, and he did actually have OCD too. He was quite a wealthy man by all accounts. He had like this red brick mini mansion, and the house was, you know, it was lovely, and it was all laid out like a show house essentially. And again, with his OCD, that this was not a problem, but it did turn out to be a problem for the couple. But he liked everything his way. So he was literally that bad with his OCD that, you know, when you put things in your fridge, all the like Coke cans or whatever, soda you have in the door of the fridge, he twisted them all so that the labels all matched up, and they were all at the front and they all matched up in a beautiful, perfect line. His OCD was quite bad. So as their relationship progressed, Nicole and Trey eventually moved into this lovely house that he had, and that is where the problems began. Because so he had this crest moon sofa, I don't really know what it's called. He had this lovely white sofa, and he wouldn't let anyone sit on it because they would get dirty. So like that was his main one rule, like do not sit on that sofa. I believe he had a couple of chairs that you were allowed to sit on, but you were not allowed to sit on that sofa. And again, he just liked things. If you moved things and pulled things out of place or made a bit of a mess, he would go absolutely mad. Because things had to stay where he put them, and that was that. It's also said that in one night, so Nicole really loved spaghetti bolognese. That was like her favourite food of all time. And one night they were having that for tea. So some sauce accidentally spilled on a tile, apparently a little bit of sauce. And then Trey went to put his bowl in the microwave and started microwaving it, and some sauce accidentally spilled out of that. Not even spilled, more like, you know, when it's too hot and it just like bursts and like explodes everywhere. Well, not even everywhere, but bits of sauce had kind of burst out of the bowl, and they were inside the microwave. Now, normally you'd just eat your tea and then go and clean them up or whatever. whichever way around you do it, you'd either clean up first and then eat tea, or some people would like to get the tea out if they were starving and then clean up the mess later. Michael literally argued with them over that for a week. For literally 7 days, he would go on about this little bit of spilt spaghetti sauce. That's how bad he was with his OCD. They just rowed about it for a long time, and literally it's a bit of sauce. Like, just clean it up, man. It's done. Job done. This, from what I could find, was the start of where the arguments began, and it just only got worse from there. And eventually, after 2 months, only 2 months of living there, Nicole had enough, and she took her son and she moved out. She couldn't deal with it anymore. And I can't blame her. I get OCD, like they like it a certain way, but then for somebody else to move in with somebody who's already that set in their ways, and then just over some spilt sauce, he goes mad for a week. That is hard to deal with. And I get it's an issue he's got, you know, he can't help it, but Nicole just didn't want to deal with it anymore, and that's her choice to do that. And she was very independent, so, you know, she ain't gonna sit around and let him tell her what she can and can't do, and etc., when she's been fine for all these years on her own, raising a son by herself. So who can blame her? For some reason, after this, I guess Michael didn't want to let her go. He decided that he would propose to her. So deep down, I believe probably Nicole still did love him, and she accepted. She then ended up moving back in with him again. So they moved in for the second time, but once more, it didn't take long until they began arguing again. This argument was a lot more aggressive. He actually ended up grabbing her engagement ring, and he fully ripped it off her finger. Like, just tore it straight off there. And of course, that would hurt. Like, it really did hurt. She ended up going to the doctors. I don't know whether she fractured her finger or something like that, but she had to get it seen to because he had literally ripped it off that violently. After that incident, she moved out for the second time. So Nicole and Trey moved into an apartment, and not long after they had moved in there, they started seeing these weird things happening. So they had a chihuahua, and they came home one day and the door was open and the dog was gone. And they knew that they hadn't left it open. They looked for her. Unfortunately, they did find her 2 days later, and she'd actually been run over and killed. So they were curious as to how that had happened because they didn't leave the door open. So straight away, they were thinking that it might have been Michael because he actually did have a key for the apartment. I don't know why they didn't just change the locks after that point, but I don't know. He had a key, so they're thinking he's gone in, he's opened the door, he's let the dog out, and then the dogs died as a result of that. But obviously they didn't have any proof, so they couldn't go around accusing him because they couldn't prove it. Then Nicole comes home one day and she goes into do some laundry, and she rings up Trey, who's in school, I believe, and tells him that somebody has come in and poured bleach all over the clothes. Again, she presumed it was probably Michael, but there again was no proof. Things didn't stop there, however, because Nicole noticed this like glow over by where the cars were parked, and as she kind of looked around, she realised that actually her car was on fire. It was destroyed and she needed a car. She felt like she had no other choice but to actually ask Michael if he could help her out. So he's gone from being the villain. Obviously there was no proof, but you know, it probably was him. So he's gone from being the villain to now the savior, where he's gonna help her get a new car. It's just, that's probably what he wanted out of it, to be honest. So he did. He helped to get her this car. She was driving around in it for quite a while, and then she decided that she wanted to get it solely in her name. So the plan was to go over to Michael's to get him to sign the car over to just her, like give him her share, or she buys his share, whatever the plan was. She'd also left a few things there as well, so she was gonna go and pick them up too. Now, it was around dinner time, and as a peace offering, Michael decided to offer her some spaghetti, which of course was her favourite meal. She agreed. She sat down, she ate the spaghetti, and then the room started spinning. Michael had put a drug in the spaghetti sauce to knock her out, which of course she didn't know about until obviously it was too late. He took Nicole to the bedroom, he took off all of her clothes, and, you know, she couldn't do anything about it. She was under the control of the drug. It was knocking her out. She was, you know, like, you know how the drug affects you. That's how she was. That sounds ridiculous, but you know what I mean. She didn't have control over arms. She didn't have control over very much. She wouldn't have been able to fight him off. and he begins to sexually assault her with a sex toy. He also takes pictures of her whilst using this sex toy. He tapes her mouth. At some point during this whole awful event, she actually manages to escape. So she runs out of that house. She is naked. She runs to the next door neighbour, screaming, shouting for help. But he manages to grab her. He drags her back to the house and he throws her in the garage. Now, because of his OCD, he throws her on this tarp and he tied her up again. He put her in handcuffs and I believe possibly a zip tie or something for her feet. I'm not quite sure on that. Or it might have just been rope because she did manage to loosen it. So I don't know whether you'd be able to loosen a zip tie if I think about it. He also cut her hair off. I don't know why, but he did. He tried to initially rip it out, but then when he couldn't, he cut it. All the while, Nicole is trying to work on the ties on her feet because she does eventually get those loose. So she carries on, and she manages to free them, but she cannot free herself from the handcuffs. This was when she decided that her only real option was to just play nice, in a sense, like speak to him nicely. So she would say things like, what's your intentions, first of all? Like, are you planning on killing me? And he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And she was like, listen, we can sort this all out. You know, we can fix it, our relationship. Just kind of feeding into him and what he wanted. Obviously, he didn't want to let her go. And so her saying that feeds into him, feeds into his insecurities, and that is essentially what he wants out of it. So she was smart in that sense. And she was saying, like, if you let me go, I won't go and tell the police and things like that. And he eventually did let her go. When she did escape from Michael's grasp, she went straight to the police. And I mean, I would as well, of course, you're gonna do that. It's like a little interview. I'll put in some voice clips if I'm able to. And you can hear the stuff that she's saying. She is just petrified.
Did you want to file charges on him?
Absolutely. I want to bury him.
Okay.
Absolutely, I want to. He's gonna kill me. I fully believe he's gonna kill me. He cannot control his anger. How long is it gonna take for you guys to go get him?
Still got to dig through a few things.
Are you serious?
But, well,
You can't go pick him up right now?
We're working on it.
He's gonna end up killing me.
They managed to pull Michael's car over, and in the boot they find some very incriminating evidence, which all ties in with what Nicole was saying. After getting the search warrant, they found rope, they found ties, they find the toy that was used, and they also find like a bin with the spaghetti sauce in it as well. So it seemed that he was gonna try and get rid of it, but you know, he didn't because he was caught before he had a chance to. So they had Michael and they were like building this case against him. He pled not guilty to sexual assault and unlawful restraint, and bail was set for him. It was quite high bail, I believe, but guess what? He had money, and so he posted that bail and he was out again. Nicole was granted this emergency protection order because he was out there, you know, he made bail, so that was putting her life in danger, so she did have this protective order on her. Now this kind of brings us full circle to the beginning of the video, because Nicole and Trey, out of sheer terror and fear for her life, she really thought he was going to kill her. She moved to Melissa, Texas with her son. They wanted to get out of that house. He had the key. He knew exactly where it was. He could get in whenever he wanted to, and they were petrified. Nicole's friend was trying to give her advice. She had been through something similar to that, and she was just trying to give her advice on how to disappear, you know, so that he just couldn't find her, because she had done it before. She had survived something like that, and she was in a terrible relationship, and she did it. So she's just trying to give her friend as much advice as she can. Now, the really tragic thing about this is, despite having the protective order, despite her moving, Michael still found her. One day, Nicole and Trey comes back and they find this tarp outside of the door along with handcuffs. Obviously, that was to symbolize that he had found them. That's the things that he used to assault her with and tie her up with in the garage, and so it was just a little like, I found you kind of thing. It's also believed that, you know, by a lot of people, that he did this so that to scare Nicole to not testify against him. And police believe that the way in which Michael actually found her was that he had put a tracking device on her car, and that entire time that they thought they was getting away from him, he was just tracking her. There was also a lot of controversy around this case with regards to Nicole and a police officer that was involved in a case exchanging these text messages, sexy text messages. Sometimes I believe she sent pictures of herself topless and things like that. And this police officer was one of the people that interviewed her when she was attacked, so there was like a lot of controversy around that. But Nicole was just trying to move on with her life and get away from everything, Michael, and how terrified she was of him, and he just wouldn't let her. Then on the 9th of September in 2013, the day began like any other normal day, like it always does. Trey went to school, he said goodbye to his mom, I love you, etc. and off he went. He spent his entire day at school, and when he got home, he noticed that a few things didn't seem right in the house. It seemed like there were like a couple of things out of place, and it just struck him as odd. So he goes up to his mum's bedroom to see where she was. He knocks on the bedroom door, but he doesn't get an answer. The door is actually locked, so he cannot get in, but he looks under the door to see whether she's actually in there, and he sees her foot hanging off the bed. So he's like, okay, she's in there, she's asleep, she locked the door, you know, she just can't hear me. So he carries on knocking. He's louder, he's shouting her, you know, to try and get her attention, and there's just nothing. So he goes into the kitchen, he gets a ballpoint pen, takes it all apart, took out the ink little section of it, and then he used that to try and unlock her door. He's obviously worried at this point, you know, why isn't she waking up? What's going on? And especially with Michael knowing where they lived, he was just terrified. So he manages to use the bit of the ink section to jimmy open the door. He shoulder barges it the rest of the way open, and this is when he finds his mother on the bed, covered in blood. She had been shot in the head twice. She was dead. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for Trey to come home and find his mother like that. She'd been shot in the face twice. She had her top pulled up and exposing her. She had her underwear down to her ankles, and she was just lied in her own blood. Trey ran out and called the police with the following phone call.
What's the address of your emergency? My mom's dead. There's blood everywhere.
And he was just totally devastated at finding his mum like that, like anyone would be. It must have been so hard, and nobody should ever have to go through that, ever. So the police launched an investigation. Obviously, Michael was the first suspect, the main suspect, but he actually had an alibi. Like, he was shopping at the time of this murder occurring, apparently, and, you know, he was on CCTV and things like that. Because Michael had an alibi, they had to look into other aspects as well, or try and find more evidence to, you know, pin him for it. Maybe it was someone else, but it was highly unlikely. You know, Michael was stalking her, he had attacked her before, he was out on bail, she was testifying against him, and now she's dead. You know, it's most likely going to be him. But obviously, you need proof of that. So they looked into it. It finally took them 9 months to get the person who did this, and it was Michael. They actually pinned him by finding his DNA in her home. And again, Michael isn't supposed to know that she even lives there. So why was his DNA there? They actually found it. So they found some condoms at the scene, and these condoms didn't have Michael's DNA inside of them. They had some other men's inside of them. So, you know, she's probably slept with some guy, but it wasn't Michael, so that kind of threw it off as well. But then this DNA that they found was on the outside of a condom. Because of his OCD, he's probably gone in there, he's after murdering her, and then he started cleaning up, and he's literally picked up this condom and thrown it away because he didn't want it like out there because of his OCD. And it got his DNA on it from that, which is insane. He would have never even thought, the thought would have never crossed his mind that he had left some DNA behind at that scene, but he did, luckily. Plus, there was no way that, you know, Nicole would have ever let him in. She was literally running away from him, scared for her life. She's not going to just open the door and let him in, is she? So, yeah, they knew it was him. During Michael's trial, obviously the police had searched his house and they found a ton of weapons. Like, he had these beautiful clothes that were all organised by colour and this perfect wardrobe, and above them he had this whole stash of guns that was sorted out by caliber, and there was tons of them. They did a ballistics test on some of those guns, and guess what? The ballistics matched the bullets that were fired into Nicole. Michael was found guilty of the murder of Nicole Wedger, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And Trey has done an interview since, you know, about how much he obviously misses his mother. He misses her the most when he needs advice. So At that moment when you just need your mum, he doesn't have her because of that monster. Michael just took her away. And for what for? Was it so that she wouldn't testify against him? Because he's in jail now anyway, rotting. It didn't really work. Some people believe, other people believe that it was because, you know, he just couldn't let her go. He loved her and he didn't want to let her go. A lot of these cases end like this, unfortunately. The thing that really crushes you is that Nicole was so terrified. She literally was saying to the police, like, he's gonna kill me. And he did. He ended up killing her. He posted his bail. The protection wasn't enough. The moving of houses wasn't enough. I just sometimes feel like more needs to be done in these cases. Because why did he get bail? If he didn't get bail, you know, this might not have happened. So it's just really frustrating. She was really young. She had a whole life ahead of her. Her son now does not have a mother. And she had such big plans. She was training to be a nurse. And, you know, she'd fought all her life to raise her son on her own. And then this man just takes everything away from her. And it's just horrific. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you've enjoyed my video, give me a big thumbs up. And I just want to say thank you to all of my regulars. And if you're new here, then consider subscribing. Anyway, guys, that's all I have today on the case of Nicole Wedger. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye.